The blood-soaked wedding dress trailed behind Eleanor Evans as she stumbled through the barren New Mexico desert, her right arm ending abruptly at the wrist where her hand should have been. The year was 1876, and what should have been the happiest day of her life had turned into a nightmare that left her alone, wounded, and desperate for help, as the merciless sun beat down upon her pale skin. Eleanor had been traveling west with her fiancé, a banker from Boston who had promised her a life of comfort in the growing settlement of Los Alamos. The stagecoach ambush happened just hours before they were to be married. The bandits took everything: the wedding gifts, the money, her fiancé's life, and in a struggle that would haunt her forever, her right hand. They had left her for dead, but Eleanor Evans was not a woman who surrendered easily to fate. Her vision blurred as she trudged forward, the white lace of her gown now stained with dirt and blood. The hastily wrapped bandage around her wrist was soaked through, and she knew she wouldn't last much longer without help. Just as her knees began to buckle, she spotted a figure on horseback approaching through the heat haze, the silhouette of a wide-brimmed hat distinct against the cloudless sky. "Help," she whispered, her voice barely audible even to herself as she collapsed onto the unforgiving earth. The rider spurred his horse forward, dust billowing behind them as they closed the distance. Brayden Hayes had been tracking a small herd of wild mustangs when he spotted what looked like a ghost wandering the desert, a woman in white, clearly in distress. As he reached her, he immediately jumped down from his saddle, his spurs jingling as his boots hit the ground. "My God," he breathed, taking in the gruesome sight before him. Her wedding dress, the bandaged wrist, the trail of blood behind her. Without hesitation, he knelt beside her and gently lifted her head. "Miss, can you hear me?" Eleanor's eyelids fluttered. Through the haze of pain and dehydration, she saw a weathered face framed by dark hair, concern etched into features hardened by years under the southwestern sun. "They took everything," she managed, her voice cracking. "Don't you worry about that now," Brayden said, quickly assessing her injuries. The wound at her wrist was severe, but his years as a ranch hand had taught him enough about injuries to know she needed proper medical attention immediately. "I'm going to get you to a doctor." With care, he lifted her onto his horse, mounting behind her to keep her steady. He could feel her body trembling against his chest as he urged his horse toward town. "Stay with me," he murmured close to her ear. "Los Alamos is just over the ridge. Doc Matthews will fix you up." Eleanor tried to focus on the rhythm of the horse beneath them, on the strong arms holding her upright, on anything but the searing pain in her arm and the memory of the attack. "My fiancé," she whispered. "They killed him." Brayden tightened his hold just slightly, protectively. "I'm sorry, miss, truly sorry, but right now we need to keep you alive." Los Alamos came into view, a collection of wooden buildings and dusty streets nestled in the high desert. Brayden rode straight to the doctor's small office on the edge of town, calling out before they'd even fully stopped. "Doc, need help out here." Dr. Matthews, a gray-haired man with spectacles perched on his nose, emerged quickly. One look at Eleanor and he ushered them inside. "Bring her in." "What happened?" "Stagecoach robbery, I think," Brayden answered, carefully carrying Eleanor into the examination room. "Found her wandering in the desert, her hand." The doctor nodded grimly. "I see. You did right bringing her straight here." He turned to his assistant, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes. "Martha, I'll need hot water, bandages, and my surgical kit." As they worked to clean and properly bandage Eleanor's wound, Brayden waited outside, pacing the small front room of the doctor's office. Sheriff Daniel Porter arrived shortly after, having heard about the woman in a wedding dress being brought to town. "Hayes," the sheriff acknowledged with a nod. Found yourself in trouble again. Brayden shook his head. Not me this time. Found her about 5 miles out, heading this way on foot. Wedding dress, missing her right hand. Said bandits hit her stagecoach, killed her fiancé. The sheriff removed his hat, running a hand through his thinning hair. Damn, probably the Rawlins gang. They've been hitting travelers along the Santa Fe route. I'll send out a search party, see if we can find the scene, maybe track them. He paused, studying Brayden. You planning to join that search, Hayes? After I know she's gonna be all right, Brayden replied, his gaze drifting to the closed door of the examination room. There was something about the woman's determination to survive that had stirred something in him. He hadn't felt much of anything since returning from the war 5 years ago. Inside the examination room, Eleanor drifted in and out of consciousness as Dr. Matthews worked on her wrist. The pain was excruciating despite the laudanum he had given her, but she gritted her teeth and endured. She had survived this far. She would not surrender now. You're a lucky woman, the doctor told her as he finished wrapping fresh bandages around her wrist. The cut was clean, and whoever did this crude first bandaging at least had the sense to tie it tight enough to slow the bleeding. Another hour out there, and we'd be having a very different conversation. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. Lucky, she whispered, looking down at the space where her hand should be. How am I lucky, Doctor? Dr. Matthews' expression softened. You're alive, Miss Evans, and from what I understand about you already, that's not something you take lightly. She closed her eyes, too exhausted to argue. The man who brought me in. Who is he? Brayden Hayes. Ranch hand mostly, does some hunting, tracking, keeps to himself. The doctor checked her pulse again. Good man, though. One of the few around here I'd trust if I were in trouble. Later, when Eleanor had been moved to a small recovery room at the back of the doctor's office, Brayden returned. He stood awkwardly in the doorway, hat in hand. Doc says you're going to pull through. Eleanor turned to look at him, her face pale against the pillow. Because of you. Thank you, Mr. Hayes, he shrugged uncomfortably. Anyone would have done the same. But it wasn't anyone, it was you. She attempted to sit up a little straighter, wincing with the effort. I don't know what I'm going to do now. I had nothing but what was on that stagecoach. Brayden stepped further into the room. Los Alamos looks after its own, Miss Evans, and while you might not have planned to end up here, you're here now. Folks will help. I was supposed to be married today, she said quietly, looking down at her bandaged wrist. Instead, I'm alone with nothing and... Her voice broke. How will I ever manage with only one hand? Brayden moved closer, pulling a chair up beside her bed. My mother lost 3 fingers in a farming accident when I was a boy, he said, his voice low and steady. She still made the best apple pie in Tennessee, could shoot better than my father, and raised 4 children. You'll manage, Miss Evans. I expect you'll do more than manage. There was something in his quiet confidence that gave Eleanor pause. It wasn't empty reassurance or pity, it was a simple statement of belief. In that moment, she saw beyond the rough exterior to a man who understood something about survival. Call me Eleanor, she said finally. After all, you've already seen me at my worst, Mr. Hayes. A small smile touched his lips. Brayden, he corrected. And I think I've seen you at your strongest, Eleanor. Not many would have made it as far as you did today. The sheriff's investigation confirmed Eleanor's account. The stagecoach had been attacked about 10 miles outside of Los Alamos. The driver and Eleanor's fiancé, William Patterson, killed. The Rawlins gang was suspected, a notorious group that had been terrorizing the territory for months. Eleanor's luggage, the wedding gifts, and even the bodies had been taken, likely to hide evidence of the crime. In the days that followed, Eleanor remained at the doctor's office, slowly regaining her strength. The women of the town brought her clothes, food, and company, while the men organized a collection to help her get established. The owner of the small hotel in town, a widow named Mrs. Griffin, offered her a room until she found more permanent arrangements. Brayden visited daily, often bringing small gifts, wildflowers from the mesa, a book from his own small collection, once even a kitten he'd found abandoned near the stables. "Thought you might want the company," he explained awkwardly as the tiny orange creature curled up on Eleanor's lap. "She's perfect," Eleanor said, gently stroking the kitten with her left hand. She had named her Marigold for her color. "But why are you being so kind to me, Brayden? You've done more than enough already." He looked down, fidgeting with his hat brim. "I know what it's like to lose everything," he said finally. "After the war, I came west with nothing but nightmares and the clothes on my back. This town gave me a chance when I needed one." Eleanor studied him, seeing for the first time the faded scar that ran along his jawline, the way his left shoulder seemed slightly lower than his right. "You were injured, shrapnel," he nodded. "Nearly lost this arm, still gives me trouble sometimes, but I'm luckier than many." Their shared experience of trauma formed a bond between them, something deeper than mere friendship or obligation. Each day, Eleanor grew stronger, not just physically but in her determination to build a new life for herself. 2 weeks after her arrival in Los Alamos, she announced her intention to find work. "I can't keep accepting charity," she told Brayden as they sat on the small porch of Mrs. Griffin's hotel. "I need to support myself." "What did you do before?" he asked, curious about her life before the tragedy. Eleanor smiled slightly. "I was a teacher in Boston. Before that, I helped my father in his bookshop. I can read, write, keep accounts. I'm sure there must be something I can do even with." She gestured to her bandaged wrist. The next day, Brayden introduced her to Mr. Donovan, the owner of the general store, who happened to need someone to help with his inventory and books. The old man was initially skeptical about hiring a one-handed woman, but was quickly impressed by Eleanor's quick mind and determination. "You'll start Monday," he told her gruffly. 6 days a week, 8 till 5, room in the back if you want it." Eleanor was elated. "Thank you, Mr. Donovan. You won't regret giving me this chance." As they left the store, Eleanor impulsively grabbed Brayden's hand with her left one, squeezing it tightly. "Thank you," she said, her eyes bright with unshed tears, "for believing in me." Brayden looked down at their joined hands, something shifting in his expression. "You did this, Eleanor." "Not me." But he didn't pull his hand away, and they walked back to the hotel together, connected in a way that felt significant to them both. Summer turned to fall, and Eleanor established herself in Los Alamos. She became known for her efficiency at the general store, her kindness to children who came in for candy, and her determination to master everyday tasks with just her left hand. She moved into the small room behind the store, making it her own with colorful curtains and the few possessions she had acquired. Brayden continued to visit her, sometimes bringing small gifts, other times just stopping by to talk. They developed a routine of Sunday dinners at the town's only restaurant, followed by walks along the creek that ran near the edge of town. Neither of them acknowledged the growing feelings between them, both still haunted by their respective pasts. One crisp October evening, as they sat by the creek watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, Eleanor finally spoke of William, the fiancé she had lost. "He was kind," she said softly. "Reliable. My parents approved. It was a sensible match." Brayden listened silently, skipping stones across the water's surface. "But I didn't love him, not really," she continued, the admission difficult even now. "I cared for him and I mourn his death. No one deserves to die like that, but our marriage would have been comfortable, not passionate." Brayden turned to look at her, the fading light casting shadows across his features. "Why are you telling me this?" Eleanor met his gaze steadily. "Because I need you to know that while I carry guilt about many things, not loving William enough isn't one of them. And because I think I'm ready to feel something again. Something real." The air between them seemed to vibrate with unspoken emotion. Slowly, Brayden reached out and took her left hand in his calloused fingers gentle against her skin. "I haven't let myself feel much of anything for a long time," he admitted. "Not since before the war. It seemed safer that way. And now," Eleanor asked, barely breathing, "now I find myself thinking about a future again, because of you." Their first kiss was tentative, a careful exploration of new territory for two people who had learned the hard way how quickly everything could be taken away. When they parted, Eleanor's cheeks were flushed, and Brayden's eyes held a light she hadn't seen before. As word spread about their courtship, most of the town was supportive. Eleanor had earned their respect with her resilience, and Brayden, despite his quiet nature, was well regarded, but not everyone approved. "You could do better than a crippled Easterner," Thomas Weber, the owner of the saloon, told Brayden one evening. "She'll never be able to keep a proper home for you with just one hand." Brayden's response was immediate and fierce. He grabbed Weber by the collar, nearly lifting the larger man off his feet. "Say another word about her, and you'll need a new set of teeth," he growled, his voice low enough that only Weber could hear. The saloon owner backed down, recognizing the dangerous glint in Brayden's eye. But the incident made Eleanor realize how others might see her as damaged, incomplete, a burden. "Perhaps Mr. Weber is right," she said when Brayden told her about the confrontation. They were sitting on the small porch behind the general store, the night air cool around them. "I'm not whole anymore, Brayden. You deserve someone who is." Anger flashed across his face. "Don't you ever say that again," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "You're the strongest person I know. This," he gently touched her bandaged wrist, "doesn't define you." "But it changes everything," she insisted, tears welling in her eyes. "How can I be a proper wife? I can't even braid my own hair anymore." Brayden's expression softened. "Then I'll learn to braid it for you," he said simply. "And you'll find ways to do everything else you need to do. You already have." His faith in her was unwavering, and it gave Eleanor the courage to believe in herself again. Over the following weeks, she worked even harder to master tasks that had once seemed impossible, buttoning her clothes, tying her shoes, even learning to write with her left hand. Each small victory was celebrated between them, cementing their bond further. In December, just before Christmas, a letter arrived for Eleanor from Boston. It was from her parents, who had finally tracked her down after months of worry. They had received word of William's death and had been frantically searching for news of their daughter. "They want me to come home," Eleanor told Brayden that evening, the letter clutched in her hand. They were in her small room, a fire crackling in the small stove against the winter chill. "They say they'll take care of me, that I shouldn't be alone in my condition." Brayden felt his heart constrict at the thought of losing her. "And what do you want?" he asked carefully, trying to keep his voice neutral. Eleanor looked around the simple room that had become her home, thinking of the life she had built in Los Alamos, of the people who had become her friends, of the man sitting across from her who had come to mean everything. "This is my home now," she said firmly. "I'm not going back." Relief washed over Brayden's face. "Thank God," he murmured, pulling her into his arms, "because I don't think I could bear to let you go." Eleanor wrote back to her parents, explaining her decision to stay and telling them about her job, her new friends, and Brayden. She invited them to visit in the spring, hoping they would understand her choice once they saw the life she had created for herself. Winter in New Mexico brought cold nights, but still plenty of sunshine during the days. Eleanor continued to work at the general store, while Brayden took on extra work breaking horses for a nearby ranch. They saw each other every evening, their relationship deepening as they shared their hopes and fears, their past wounds and future dreams. On Christmas Eve, the entire town gathered for a celebration at the small church. Pine boughs decorated the simple wooden building, and candles cast a warm glow over the festivities. Eleanor wore a new green dress that Mrs. Griffin had helped her make, while Brayden had splurged on a new shirt and had even polished his worn boots for the occasion. After the Christmas service, there was singing, dancing, and plenty of food shared among the townspeople. Eleanor watched as children ran around playing games, their excitement for the holiday infectious. For the first time since the attack, she felt truly happy, surrounded by community and love. "Dance with me," Brayden said, appearing beside her with 2 cups of punch, offering her one. Eleanor hesitated, looking down at her right arm. She had removed the bandages weeks ago, the wound fully healed now, leaving only the stark absence where her hand should have been. "I don't know if I can." "Of course you can," he said confidently, setting down both cups and holding out his hand. "I'll lead." The musicians were playing a slow waltz, and Brayden guided Eleanor onto the makeshift dance floor. He placed his right hand gently on her waist, taking her left hand in his other one. "Just follow me," he murmured close to her ear. Eleanor felt self-conscious at first, aware of eyes on them, but soon lost herself in the rhythm of the dance and the feeling of being held in Brayden's arms. They moved together smoothly, as if they had been dancing together for years. "See, you're a natural," Brayden smiled down at her, his eyes reflecting the candlelight. "Only because you make it easy," she replied, feeling a rush of love for this man who continually showed her what was possible instead of reminding her of her limitations. As the evening drew to a close, Brayden walked Eleanor back to her room behind the store. The night was clear and cold, stars glittering overhead like diamonds scattered across black velvet. "I have something for you," he said, reaching into his pocket. "It's not much, but—" He pulled out a small package wrapped in brown paper and string. Eleanor untied it carefully, revealing a delicate silver chain with a small heart-shaped locket. "Oh, Brayden," she breathed, running her finger over the intricate engraving. "It's beautiful." "Open it," he urged softly. Inside was a tiny painting of the two of them, skillfully done by the town's resident artist. On the opposite side was an inscription: "Two hearts, one path." Tears filled Eleanor's eyes as Brayden took the necklace and carefully fastened it around her neck. "I love you, Eleanor Evans," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I know it hasn't been long and you've been through so much, but I can't imagine my life without you in it." Eleanor reached up to touch his face, her left hand tracing the line of his jaw. "I love you too," she whispered. "You've helped me find strength I didn't know I had." Their kiss under the winter stars sealed a promise between them, a commitment to walk forward together no matter what challenges lay ahead. The new year brought changes to Los Alamos. The railroad was expanding west, and there was talk of a spur line coming through the town, which would bring growth and opportunity. Mr. Donovan began making plans to expand the general store, and he offered Eleanor a partnership rather than just employment. "You've got a good head for business," he told her, "and folks trust you. Could use someone like you as a partner." Eleanor was stunned by the offer. "I don't have any money to invest," she reminded him. The old man waved his hand dismissively. "You've already invested with your work. I'm not getting any younger, and my son's not interested in taking over. You learned the business from the ground up. Maybe someday it's yours entirely." It was an incredible opportunity, one that would give Eleanor financial security and a respected position in the community. She accepted gratefully, throwing herself into learning every aspect of running the store. Brayden, meanwhile, had been saving money from his various jobs. In February, he purchased a small piece of land just outside town, with a dilapidated cabin and a small stream running through the property. "What do you think?" he asked Eleanor as they stood on a small rise overlooking the land. The mountains were visible in the distance, snow-capped against the blue sky. "It needs work, but the soil is good. Could raise horses here, maybe some cattle." Eleanor turned to him, understanding dawning. "Brayden, is this? Are you planning to settle here?" He nodded, suddenly nervous. "I've been moving around since the war ended, never found a place that felt like it could be home, until now." He took her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "Until you." "It's perfect," she said softly, imagining a life built together on this land. "I can see it all, a garden there by the stream, the cabin expanded with a proper porch. And maybe a few little ones running around someday," Brayden suggested, his eyes never leaving her face. Eleanor's breath caught. They hadn't spoken explicitly about marriage or children. "Is that what you want? With you?" "Yes." He dropped to one knee before her, still holding her hand. "Eleanor Evans, I know I don't have much to offer. I'm just a cowboy with some land and a broken-down cabin. But everything I have, everything I am, is yours if you want it. Will you marry me?" Tears streamed down Eleanor's face as she nodded, unable to speak for a moment. Finally, she managed to whisper, "Yes. Yes, I'll marry you." Brayden stood and pulled her into his arms, kissing her deeply. When they broke apart, both breathless, he rested his forehead against hers. "I promise you won't ever regret this." "I know," she said simply, believing it with her whole heart. News of their engagement spread quickly through Los Alamos. Most offered congratulations, though there were still a few who whispered about the one-handed bride and whether Brayden Hayes was settling for damaged goods. But Eleanor had grown stronger in the months since her arrival in town, more confident in herself and less concerned with others' opinions. They set the wedding date for April, when the desert would be blooming with wildflowers. In the meantime, Brayden worked tirelessly on the cabin, repairing the roof, adding a second room, and building furniture with his own hands. Eleanor continued at the store while also preparing for their life together, sewing curtains and linens in the evenings. In March, Eleanor received another letter from Boston. Her parents would be arriving by train the following week, eager to meet her fiancé and see her new home. Their visit brought a mix of emotions for Eleanor: joy at reuniting with them, anxiety about their reaction to her injury and her new life, and pride in what she had accomplished despite everything. "What if they try to convince you to go back east?" Brayden worried the night before their arrival. Eleanor snuggled closer to him on the bench outside her room, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. "They won't succeed," she assured him. "My life is here now, with you." Margaret and Henry Evans arrived on the Wednesday train, looking travel-worn but relieved to see their daughter waiting at the small station. The reunion was emotional, with many tears and embraces. Eleanor introduced Brayden, who stood nervously nearby in his best shirt. "So you're the young man who saved our daughter," Margaret said, studying him with sharp eyes. "No, madam," Brayden replied honestly. "She saved herself. I just happened to be there to help." His answer seemed to please both parents, and the tension eased as they made their way to the hotel where they would be staying during their visit. Over the next few days, Eleanor showed them around Los Alamos, introduced them to her friends, and took them to see the store where she worked and the land where she would soon live as Brayden's wife. "You've made a good life here," her father said one evening as they sat on the hotel porch. Different from what we imagined for you, but good nonetheless. And Mr. Hayes clearly adores you, her mother added, watching as Brayden chatted with the hotel owner across the street. Though I worry about the practical aspects, running a household with your difficulty. Eleanor felt a familiar flicker of defensiveness, but it was softer now, tempered by understanding. I manage just fine, Mother. There are some things I do differently, but I've learned to adapt. Her parents exchanged glances. We brought something for you, her father said, retrieving a package from inside. We weren't sure if it would be welcome, but… Eleanor unwrapped the paper to find a prosthetic hand, beautifully crafted from porcelain with a leather attachment. It was painted to match her skin tone, with delicate fingers that could be positioned but not moved independently. It's for appearances, her mother explained hesitantly. For when you might want to look complete. Eleanor stared at the artificial hand, emotions warring within her. Part of her was touched by their effort to help, while another part felt a renewed sense of being somehow deficient, needing to disguise her injury for the comfort of others. Thank you, she said finally, rewrapping the prosthetic. It was thoughtful of you to bring this. That night she showed it to Brayden, uncertain of her own feelings about it. Would you prefer if I wore this? She asked, unable to meet his eyes. For the wedding, perhaps, so I look normal in the photographs. Brayden took the artificial hand, examining it briefly before setting it aside. Then he gently lifted her right arm, pressing a kiss to the scarred wrist. This is part of you, he said firmly. Part of the woman I fell in love with. I don't want you to hide it, not for me, not for anyone. Eleanor felt tears well up, overwhelmed by his acceptance. Not everyone sees it that way. Then they're fools, he said simply, gathering her into his arms. You're perfect exactly as you are. The week with her parents passed quickly, and by the time they departed, they had given their blessing to the marriage, impressed by the community Eleanor had found and the man she had chosen. They promised to return for the wedding, bringing a few treasured items from her childhood home. As April approached, preparations for the wedding intensified. The entire town became involved, eager to celebrate something joyful after a hard winter. The women organized a sewing circle to help Eleanor with her wedding dress, while the men planned to build a dance floor in the town square for the celebration afterward. 2 weeks before the wedding, disaster struck. The Rawlins gang, who had attacked Eleanor's stagecoach months earlier, raided Los Alamos in the middle of the night. They set fire to several buildings, including the general store, before the town's men could organize a defense. Eleanor awoke to the smell of smoke and the sound of gunfire. She barely had time to grab Marigold and a shawl before flames engulfed her small room behind the store. Outside, chaos reigned as townspeople formed bucket lines while others exchanged gunfire with the bandits. Eleanor. Brayden's frantic voice cut through the din as he searched for her among the crowd. When he spotted her, safe but shaken, the relief on his face was palpable. He rushed to her side, checking her for injuries. Are you hurt? She shook her head, clutching her cat to her chest. No, but the store. Everything. Buildings can be rebuilt, he said firmly. You're what matters. The townspeople managed to drive off the bandits, but not before significant damage had been done. The general store was a total loss, along with the saloon and 2 other buildings. Miraculously, no one had been killed, though several men had sustained injuries in the gunfight. In the aftermath, the sheriff organized a posse to pursue the Rawlins gang, determined to bring them to justice once and for all. Brayden, despite his desire to join the hunt for the men who had hurt Eleanor twice now, chose to stay in Los Alamos. My place is here with you, he told her as they helped sort through the charred remains of the store, salvaging what little could be saved. We'll rebuild together. Mr. Donovan, standing nearby with soot streaking his aged face, nodded in agreement. Insurance will cover most of it. We'll have a new store up by summer's end. The wedding plans were in disarray. Eleanor had lost her dress in the fire, along with most of her possessions. The town was focused on rebuilding, with little energy for celebrations. But when she suggested postponing the wedding, Brayden wouldn't hear of it. "Unless you've changed your mind about wanting to marry me," he said, half joking but with a hint of genuine worry in his eyes. "Never," she assured him, squeezing his hand. "But everything's such a mess right now." "Then we need something good to hold on to," he insisted. "The wedding stands, even if it's just you and me and the preacher under a tree somewhere." News of the couple's determination spread through town, and a remarkable thing happened. The community, despite their own losses and challenges, rallied around them. Mrs. Griffin offered fabric from her personal collection for a new wedding dress. The town's best seamstress volunteered her services. The carpenter promised to have the dance floor completed in time, saying they all needed something to celebrate. "See," Brayden said to Eleanor as offers of help poured in. "This is why I love this place, these people. They understand what matters." The sheriff's posse returned a week later with news that they had tracked the Rawlins gang to a hideout in the mountains. In the ensuing gunfight, 2 of the gang members had been killed, including the leader, while the rest were captured and would face trial for their crimes. "One of them confessed to the stagecoach robbery last summer," Sheriff Porter told Eleanor privately. "Said he was sorry about your hand, claimed it was an accident during the struggle." Eleanor absorbed this information silently, unsure how to feel. The men who had changed her life forever, who had killed William and left her for dead, had finally faced justice. But it didn't undo the damage, didn't restore what had been lost. "Does it help?" Brayden asked later when she told him. "Knowing they've been caught?" Eleanor considered the question carefully. "Not as much as I thought it would," she admitted. "But it's finished now. I can truly move forward." And move forward they did. The wedding took place as planned on a perfect April morning. The desert was indeed in bloom, with cacti displaying vibrant flowers and wildflowers carpeting the normally barren landscape. The entire town gathered in the small church, which had escaped damage in the raid. Eleanor wore a simple but elegant dress of ivory silk, her hair adorned with wildflowers. She carried a small bouquet of desert blooms in her left hand, her right arm bare and visible, a deliberate choice to enter her new life honestly, without hiding any part of herself. Brayden waited for her at the altar, looking more handsome than she had ever seen him in a new suit, his dark hair neatly combed, his eyes never leaving her as she walked down the aisle on Mr. Donovan's arm, her parents beaming from the front row. When it came time for the exchange of rings, there was a brief, awkward moment as Eleanor tried to hold Brayden's ring. Sensing her frustration, Brayden gently took her left hand in both of his. "This is all I need to hold," he said, loud enough for those nearest to hear. "This hand and your heart. Nothing else matters." Tears glistened in Eleanor's eyes as she slipped the ring onto his finger, then allowed him to place her ring on her left hand. "I love you," she whispered as the preacher pronounced them husband and wife. Their first kiss as a married couple was met with cheers and applause from the assembled townspeople. As they walked back down the aisle together, Eleanor felt a sense of completion that had nothing to do with physical wholeness and everything to do with the man beside her and the community surrounding them. The celebration afterward was joyous, with music, dancing, and more food than the small town had seen in one place in years. Eleanor and Brayden opened the dancing, moving together as naturally as they had on Christmas Eve, her left hand in his right, his other hand supporting her back. "Mrs. Hayes," Brayden murmured as they danced. "Has a nice ring to it, doesn't it?" Eleanor smiled up at him, her heart full. "The nicest." As the sun began to set, casting golden light across the town square, Brayden led his bride away from the celebration toward their new home. The cabin had been transformed in recent weeks, with fresh paint, new windows, and furniture crafted with care. The ladies of the town had added finishing touches: curtains at the windows, a colorful quilt on the bed, wildflowers in pottery vases. "Welcome home," Brayden said, lifting Eleanor into his arms to carry her across the threshold. Inside, he set her down gently, watching her face as she took in their home for the first time. "It's perfect," she said, turning to embrace him. "Everything I could have wished for." That night, as they lay together in the quiet darkness of their new home, Eleanor thought about the journey that had brought her here. From the tragic attack that had nearly taken her life to finding a strength within herself she hadn't known existed, to falling in love with a man who saw her exactly as she was and loved every part of her. "What are you thinking about?" Brayden asked, his voice soft in the darkness as he traced patterns on her bare shoulder. "About how sometimes the worst thing that happens to you can lead to the best," she replied, snuggling closer to him. "If the stagecoach hadn't been attacked, I never would have come to Los Alamos. Never would have met you. I hate that you suffered," he said, his arms tightening around her, "but I can't regret that it brought you to me." Summer passed in a blur of happiness as Eleanor and Brayden settled into married life. The new general store was built larger and sturdier than before, with a proper office for Eleanor, who continued her partnership with Mr. Donovan. Brayden divided his time between working their land and taking odd jobs around town, slowly building up their savings and adding improvements to their home. In August, Eleanor discovered she was expecting a child. The news filled them both with joy and a touch of apprehension. "How will I manage a baby with only one hand?" Eleanor worried aloud as they sat on their porch one evening, watching the sunset paint the desert in fiery hues. Brayden placed his hand gently on her still flat stomach. "The same way you manage everything else, with determination and creativity. And I'll be right beside you." Her parents returned for another visit in the fall, bringing baby clothes and advice. They stayed longer this time, getting to know their son-in-law better and helping prepare for their future grandchild. Eleanor was touched by how her mother quietly observed her methods for accomplishing daily tasks, then suggested adaptations that might make caring for an infant easier. "I've been thinking," her father said before they departed. "Perhaps we might consider moving west ourselves. Boston feels empty without you, and the idea of watching our grandchild grow up from a distance is difficult." Eleanor was surprised but pleased. "You would leave everything you know," her mother smiled, looking more relaxed than Eleanor could remember seeing her. "Sometimes change is exactly what's needed. We've learned that from you." Winter came early that year, with heavy snows that isolated Los Alamos for weeks at a time. Eleanor's pregnancy progressed without complications, though she grew increasingly uncomfortable as her body changed. Brayden was attentive and protective, finishing the nursery addition to their cabin and fussing over her in a way that amused and touched her. On a cold night in March 1878, Eleanor went into labor. The town's midwife arrived through a late-season snowstorm, bringing her supplies and calm expertise. Brayden paced anxiously outside the bedroom door, only allowed in periodically to offer Eleanor comfort and encouragement. After 16 hours of labor, their son was born, a healthy, robust boy with a shock of dark hair like his father's and eyes that promised to be as blue as his mother's. They named him William Henry Hayes, honoring both Eleanor's lost fiancé and her father. "He's perfect," Brayden whispered, cradling his son with a mixture of awe and terror. So small. Eleanor watched them together, her heart so full she thought it might burst. "You're a natural," she assured him, reaching out to touch the baby's tiny hand. To her delight, his fingers curled reflexively around hers, holding tight. The challenges of motherhood with one hand were real but not insurmountable. Eleanor developed techniques for diapering, bathing, and dressing the baby, sometimes using her teeth or forearm to hold things in place. Brayden was an involved father, taking on many of the tasks that Eleanor found most difficult without complaint. "We make a good team," he told her one night as they finally got little Will settled after a fussy evening. "Always have." By the time Will was 6 months old, Eleanor's parents had made their decision. They sold their house and bookshop in Boston and purchased a small property on the other side of Los Alamos. Henry opened a new bookstore in town, while Margaret quickly became involved in community activities, including helping to establish the town's first proper school. Los Alamos was growing rapidly now, with the railroad spur completed and new families arriving regularly. The Hayes family grew as well. When Will was 3, Eleanor gave birth to twin girls they named Sarah and Rose. The births were easier than her first, and she approached mothering 3 children with confidence born from experience. "You're remarkable," Brayden told her one evening as they watched their children playing in the yard of their now expanded home. The original cabin had been incorporated into a proper house, with a large kitchen, 4 bedrooms, and the wide porch Eleanor had envisioned on their first visit to the property. "Do you know that? Most women with 2 hands don't manage half of what you do." Eleanor smiled, leaning her head against his shoulder. "I have an excellent partner, and I've learned that limitations only exist if you accept them." In the years that followed, their family and prosperity continued to grow. Brayden established a successful horse breeding operation, while Eleanor eventually bought out Mr. Donovan when he retired, becoming the sole owner of the largest general store in the county. Their 4th child, another boy named James, arrived when the twins were 4, completing their family. Eleanor never did use the prosthetic hand her parents had brought, though she kept it as a reminder of how far she had come. Occasionally, she encountered newcomers to town who stared or asked insensitive questions about her missing hand, but these incidents bothered her less and less as time passed. "Mama, why do you only have one hand?" Little Sarah asked her one day when she was about 5, apparently having never thought to question it before. Eleanor considered how to answer. "I lost it a long time ago before I met your father. Some bad men took it from me." The child frowned, processing this information. "Does it make you sad?" "Sometimes," Eleanor admitted honestly. "But mostly I'm just grateful for the hand I do have, and for all the wonderful things in my life like you and your brothers and sister and your father." Sarah nodded solemnly. "And you can still braid my hair and make biscuits and everything." "That's right," Eleanor smiled. "I can do everything I need to do." Later, she recounted the conversation to Brayden as they prepared for bed. "It never even occurred to her that it was unusual until today," she marveled. "To our children, this is just who I am." Brayden pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Who you are is extraordinary, hand or no hand. I knew it the moment I found you in that desert, too stubborn to die despite everything." "You saved me," Eleanor said softly, tracing the lines of his face, familiar now after 10 years of marriage. "No," he corrected her, catching her left hand and bringing it to his lips. "You saved yourself. I just helped you see what was possible. And this hand," he kissed her palm, "this is still all I need to hold to be the happiest man alive." As Los Alamos grew into a proper town, then a small city, The Hayes family remained at its heart. Eleanor used her position as a successful businesswoman to advocate for others with disabilities, employing veterans who had lost limbs in various conflicts, and demonstrating by example that physical limitations need not define a person's capabilities. Brayden's horse farm became renowned throughout the territory for the quality of its stock, and he served several terms on the town council, helping to guide the development of the community they both loved. Their children grew up strong and independent, each finding their own path while maintaining the close family bonds their parents had fostered. On their 25th wedding anniversary, the entire town gathered to celebrate the couple who had become living symbols of resilience and devotion. A grand party was held in the town square, with music, dancing, and speeches honoring their contributions to Los Alamos. If anyone had told me on that terrible day when I lost my hand that it would lead me to the richest, fullest life I could imagine, Eleanor said when it was her turn to speak, I would never have believed them. But standing here today, surrounded by our beautiful family and this wonderful community, I can truly say I wouldn't change a single moment of my journey. Brayden stood beside her, as steady and supportive as he had been from the beginning. When she finished speaking, he simply took her left hand in his, raised it to his lips, and kissed it tenderly. No words were needed. The gesture said everything about their enduring love and partnership. That night, as they walked home under a canopy of stars much like the night he had proposed nearly 3 decades earlier, Eleanor reflected on the extraordinary life they had built together. You ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't found me that day? She asked, her voice soft in the darkness. Brayden's arm tightened around her shoulders. No, he said firmly. Some things are meant to be, Eleanor. I believe with my whole heart that I was meant to find you and you were meant to find the strength to keep going until I did. Eleanor smiled, leaning into his familiar warmth. 25 years, 4 children, and more happiness than I ever dreamed possible, all because a cowboy held my left hand and told me it was all he needed. And it still is, Brayden assured her, stopping to turn her toward him. In the moonlight, his face was as handsome to her as it had been in their youth, the lines and gray hairs only adding character to the features she loved. It always will be. Their kiss beneath the desert stars sealed once again the promise they had made to each other so many years before to face life's challenges together, to find strength in each other's support, and to never let adversity define their possibilities. As they continued home to the house, filled with memories of their shared life, Eleanor knew with absolute certainty that she had found something far more valuable than what she had lost. In Brayden's unwavering love and in her own discovered resilience, she had found completeness that had nothing to do with physical wholeness and everything to do with the capacity of the human heart to heal, to hope, and to love without reservation. And as they reached their front porch, Brayden once again took her left hand in his, the gesture as natural and necessary as breathing. This, he said softly, echoing the words that had begun their journey together, is still all I need to hold.